This Zoom replay was originally streamed autumn 2020 and is brought to you in part through the generous support of the Tibet House US Menla membership community and viewers like you.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. Welcome again. My name is Nick. It's nice to see you all here. Although admittedly, there are more folks than I can fit on one screen. So at least I know you're out there. I see some familiar names and faces, which is great. So we have about an hour and 15 minutes tonight to talk a little bit about Yoga Nidra and to explain what that means for those of you that are new to this concept or just getting to know it, or maybe some of you have been practicing for a long time. And also lucid dreaming, which is a related topic, but not exactly the same. And the inspiration for this talk came from a question that I got once upon a time when I was teaching Yoga Nidra, and someone who worked at a yoga studio where I was teaching basically said, well, what's the difference between these? You know, how do they relate? And I find that, yeah, you know, we don't really have very clear definitions yet in the West of what Yoga Nidra is. I think it's still being defined. And lucid dreaming is a kind of anomalous thing that also some people think it's one thing or it's another thing. And it's still really being defined in the West. So let's start there, and then we'll take a moment to drop in together. But I feel like now that we're up and running, I might as well fill in the blanks. And the way that this next hour or so will flow is I'll talk a little bit about how these two concepts and practices interrelate, ways in which they're different, ways in which they're similar, and ways in which they basically complement each other. And then we'll do some Yoga Nidra practice. And at that point, you'll have a sense of how the Yoga Nidra practice itself, which is essentially a guided relaxation practice, will have an impact on your dreams and your lucid dreaming practice as well. I'm not sure how far we'll go into how these ideas mesh with traditional yoga, Tibetan Buddhism, and other indigenous cultures for whom dream yoga has a long-standing tradition. In the West, again, these concepts are relatively new. We're still kind of feeling them out. There are very few practitioners, or at least practitioners who are really exploring those interrelationships. And yeah, I think, you know, we're kind of making it up as we go in a sense. So in any event, Yoga Nidra means conscious sleep or dynamic sleep. Nidra meaning yoga, or pardon me, Nidra meaning sleep in Sanskrit, and yoga meaning union. So when we're talking about Yoga Nidra at this stage of the yogic tradition, we're not referring to yoga as so much the physical movements that you would come to associate with yoga in the West, but the true meaning of yoga, meaning union between self and other, union between self and divine. So when we talk about yoga in the context of Yoga Nidra, we're talking about the true experience of yoga, or oneness, interconnectedness. And the idea behind Yoga Nidra as a kind of concept is that you can experience this union during sleep. You can practice sleeping, both the onset of sleep and the ascendance from sleep, as a means to further your spiritual development and realize yoga throughout all of the changing states of consciousness. So the idea that we are either awake or sleeping or dreaming, these are very crude dichotomies. And ultimately what we're looking to do is to develop an understanding of the continuity between these shifting states of consciousness so that we can realize yoga, or union, or this pure being, you might say, the sense of complete awareness, total awareness throughout all of these changes. And lucid dreaming is basically a practice of knowing that you're dreaming when you're dreaming. So for the most part, most of us, presumably, when we sleep at night, we may have dreams where our consciousness, where our awareness or sense of self shows up in those dreams, that we may be very engaged in them. We may be witnessing them as if we feel their dream is kind of distant and we're watching it play out in front of us. And then there are, on occasion, and for those of us that really attempt to cultivate these things, and for some of us who may be really gifted with this, there are these moments of clarity where you know that you're in a dream. You know exactly where you are. You're sleeping in your bed, presumably, or in some other position. And at the same time, you can be cognizant of your state of consciousness, and at which point all bets are off, you might say. It's kind of like you're breaking into your imagination. You're hacking your imagination. And one big question is, well, okay, so if we have this potential, what do we do with it? What happens if you know that you're in a dream, and how can you then begin to shape that dream or not shape that dream? And what can you learn about the nature of consciousness and the self in relation to this capacity, this exceptional experience? So that's a mouthful. That's a brief overview of these two ideas. And of course, Yoga Nidra, this first definition is this idea of having total consciousness or yogic awareness in the midst of your sleep. But conventional teachings these days, when we talk about Yoga Nidra, we're referring to guided relaxation, or a form of guided relaxation that's designed to bring about this yogic state of consciousness. So yoga is both a noun and a verb. It's a state of awareness we can realize, and it's also the practice of arriving at that realization. Okay, so I'm going to take a breath now. And welcome again, everyone. So let's take a couple minutes here just to ground ourselves. Usually I would do that when we first come online, but it seems like we hit the ground running. Or I hit the ground running anyway, because I'm aware that we don't have too much time to discuss something as far-reaching as these practices and philosophies. And at the same time, the essence of what we're after can be realized now without any effort at all. Seems pretty ironic. But this is really where it all leads. It ends and begins. So you might take 2 or 3 nice deep belly breaths. Your eyes can be open or closed. For those of you that are long-time meditators or have a steady meditation practice, you can do your thing. Anything that I suggest is just a suggestion. So connecting with your breath. And you might let your breath drop down into your belly. Letting your belly expand as you inhale. And gently contract as you exhale. So connecting with our breath. And connecting with our body. our sense of our body. You might feel into the tips of your toes, the lengths of your legs, the base of your spine, your root. Feeling into all of your muscles and bones, and just inviting a sense of softness. A kind of effortless effort. So connecting with our breath, connecting with our body, and connecting with the earth. The frequency of the earth, the place where all the birds and trees are hanging out, the pace with which the grass grows. It's a different kind of time. And recognizing that we are also the earth. And connecting with the cosmos, both inside and outside. The sense of infinity, infinite space. And if you prefer, it could be your sense of the divine, your sense of source, or the healing energy of the whole universe. And finally, you might imagine someone or something that may benefit from your practice, from this little bit of focused awareness that we're cultivating now. And imagine striking the tuning fork of your heart, as if you were blowing a gentle breeze on the embers of your heart, without too much effort, without the need to push anything or force anything. Just bringing awareness to the heart and offering it up, perhaps to this person or this animal or place. It could be to everyone here in attendance tonight. It could be to the whole world. Okay. So even as we transition a little bit, you don't have to stop this practice. If you want to call it meditation, if you call it prayer, if you call it being grounded or in your body, embodied, or just aware, they're all basically synonymous. And we can learn to live in this way so that it becomes our default rather than something that we turn on or off for a few minutes here or there every day or a couple times a week or something like that. So, again, welcome. My name is Nick, and it's an honor to be here with everybody tonight. it's like take two, starting again. A little bit about me. You may be wondering how I came to be here, why I'm here, why I'm speaking and you're not speaking. I was invited by Menla a few months ago, and I want to give a big thank you to Anne Marie Miller, who initiated this conversation and was the inspiration behind this talk. And I've had an interesting journey. About 20 years ago, I was a student at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. And for those of you that are practicing Buddhists, Emory might ring a bell, as there's a strong affiliation to Tibetan Buddhism, and in particular to the Dalai Lama. So I was a senior at Emory, and I took a course called Tibetan Mind-Body Healing. And this was my last semester in college, and I was told that this was an easy A, and that I should take this course and it'd be a breeze. So I signed up, not knowing anything about Tibetan Buddhism, having really never meditated much in my life, although I was doing things that I later realized were embodiment practices, mindfulness practices. And I was also taking a yoga class that last semester to fulfill my gym requirement in school. So these things came together right at the same time. And interestingly enough, my professor was a fellow named Geshe Lobsang Tenzin Negi, or Neji. And I didn't realize it at the time, but he was the head of and still is the head to this day, of the Drepung Losling Monastery in Atlanta, which is a really famous monastery in Atlanta. I think the largest in Atlanta, maybe even in the Southeast. And I also, maybe 20 years later, or somewhere along that line, learned that he had been appointed by the Dalai Lama himself to be the ambassador of Tibetan Buddhism in that region. You know, the Dalai Lama basically sent him to Emory to help become this messenger. So a messenger of the Dharma. So about a month into that course, we were visited by a professor named Dr. Robert Thurman, who at the time meant nothing to me, although I guess I knew he was Uma Thurman's dad. So we thought, okay, cool, Uma Thurman's dad is coming to speak with us. And he came and he talked a little bit. And again, it was only much later that I put two and two together, realized who he was and his, how accomplished he is in this world. And to now find myself here tonight is truly it's kind of feels in some ways like a homecoming. I don't want to read into it too much, but when I was contacted by Menla, I thought it was pretty fascinating to have come full circle like that. So if you believe in karma, you might say that's how this has happened. But of course, it wouldn't matter either way because everything is related. So a month and a half, 2 months into that semester, I had a dream one night where I was shot between the eyes and died, and went into a kind of nothingness, just a dark, empty space. I wasn't afraid. I thought that I may actually be dead. And I think the urban legend was that if you die in a dream, you actually die. So I'm passing through this kind of nothingness. It feels pretty blissful. And then I was reborn into a hospital room, out of a birth canal and into a hospital room. And I was a 22-year-old kid. So when I woke up from that, I was pretty amazed. I immediately wrote down the contents of the dream. I didn't know what had happened, but I knew something had changed. Something was different. And I went and I told Geshe-la, my teacher, and he just kind of, smiled and nodded. It's kind of typical, right? He didn't say one way or the other what had happened. Around the same time in the yoga class across the campus, I was introduced to this practice of Yoga Nidra, which was basically consisted of the instructor guiding us into deep states of relaxation and meditation while laying down. So everyone would lay down in the room and she'd turn off the lights and take us into this meditation. And in retrospect, it was kind of a visionary experience things that I didn't think were possible, like seeing vivid colors and lights and all kinds of cool visual effects in particular. That became kind of commonplace, at least in her presence too. So the universe was conspiring, you might say. It was several months after that I had what I would consider my first real lucid dream, where I woke up in a dream. I actually fell out of bed, and then realized that I saw the clock floating against the wall, and I realized I was still dreaming, and that I was now free in this dream to do whatever I pleased. And a voice said to me, "Practice yoga your whole life." I don't know who that voice was, what that voice was, but someone or something or higher self, whatever you want to call it, gave me this message. And it really set me on a course that I'm still on to this day. So I share all this to say that there is something magical about the Tibetan tradition in particular, and maybe Buddhism more generally, something magical about yoga, and something truly profound and mystical about this practice of yoga nidra, or learning to navigate the changing states of consciousness, and recognizing that the way we engage with the world, and I don't like to use these crude generalizations, but for the most part, we're on a kind of narrow bandwidth, you might say. We see the world in a myopic way, where we take things for granted. We don't necessarily operate with the so-called beginner's mind, where we are amazed by reality as it is. We see reality through a kind of filter most of the time because of any number of factors, mostly because of our story of who we think we are and what we're here to do, and the mission that each of us is on each and every day when we wake up. And what meditation is teaching us to do, and what these meditative traditions and insight traditions are teaching us to do, is to stop, reconnect with ourselves, our breath, our body, the earth, and to realize that there is a much greater spectrum of information and experience available at our disposal, if only we took the time and the practice and learned how to open our eyes to that. So again, one way to do that, and there are lots of different ways, is to practice maintaining awareness and literally opening the body-mind as we move in and out of sleep, and even while we're asleep. One of the things that really struck me initially in my learning about yoga was this, and dreams for that matter, because after those experiences I mentioned, I started to take a vested interest in my dreams, recording my dreams almost every night for the last many years after that started. What really struck me was this idea that most of us are awake, quote unquote, awake 16 hours a day, and then we have this 8 hours of sleep at night, which could be totally chaotic depending on what your dreams are like. It could seem really random. They might be quite meaningful, but they're generally out of our control. We're just a kind of witness to them, or we're caught up in them, but we don't know that we're there. We don't even really know who we are in those moments. And the yogic traditions say that's can be wasted time in some respects, or on the positive, that's time that you could be practicing. You could devote that time to your growth. And we spend about 10 years of our lives in dreams, right? If you figure you live to be, say, 90 years old, and you spend a third of that time asleep, that's 30 years of our lives asleep. And I realize 90 years old is kind of generous, but let's just use it for an example. That's 30 years asleep, and about a third of that time in dreams. So 10 years of our lifetime is spent in this dream world. And that is fertile ground for practice, for introspection, for beginning to understand more about who we are. And ultimately, if you really were to devote yourself to understanding dreams and the potential of the dream state, it becomes an opportunity to be, you might say, truly awake, even more conscious than we are in our waking consciousness. So there are lots of theories about lucid dreaming and what kind of state of consciousness it is. And my feeling on this is that there isn't one kind of state of consciousness in lucid dreams. You could be awake and aware in your dream and still reinforcing all kinds of egoic tendencies. Whereas alternatively, you could be awake and aware in your dreams, deconstructing your egoic tendencies and opening it into a form of super consciousness. And anything in between, there is just this enormous spectrum. So lucid dreaming is less knowing that you're dreaming when you're dreaming. That's a kind of simple definition. But really, lucid dreaming is an invitation to an entire realm or lucid complex, a whole realm of conscious experience, ranging from rather dull consciousness to, at the other end, you might say yogic consciousness, what the traditions call samadhi or jhana states of deep meditation. So the reason we're having this talk tonight, the reason I'm so interested in this is because I began to have those kinds of experiences. First, they were kind of fleeting, and then as time went by, and again, I think this is due not just to all of the waking yogic practices that I might have done during the day, but also learning how to be more present in my dreams. And there are specific practices that you can do for that. So, just change my view here. Again, it's a kind of broad topic, but let's give you a kind of takeaway now, which is for those of you that have not really invested that much time in your dreams, but you're finding these ideas that I'm talking about, this idea of exploring exceptional experiences, exploring the more expanded states of consciousness or the more deep meditative states of consciousness, the very first thing that you'd want to do is to start journaling your dreams. This has nothing to do with lucid dreaming proper. It's not a specific lucid dreaming technique. It's not really a yogic technique per se, but it starts to venerate this part of ourselves that for most of us is dormant, has been neglected. If we don't invest in our dreams, it like a muscle, it atrophies. So we have to really start to pay attention to our dreams, record them as best we can, as a means to basically fueling it with intention, fueling that part of ourselves with intention. So that's first and foremost, that's your way. And I'm a pretty firm believer that if you were to only do that, just to take this interest in your dreams and do your best to record them regularly, you'll start to notice changes in your dreams and changes in yourself, both in dreams and in waking. Okay? So dream journaling is very important, probably the most important piece to this. And second most important is what we're going to do in a couple moments here, is yoga nidra practice. Again, this is my take. It's a method or a formula that has worked for me and worked for others that I've either taught to or learned from. But the two go hand in hand because yoga nidra is training the body mind to be alert and aware, but not hyper vigilant. So when I say alert, to just be conscious while the body sleeps. So basically, I wouldn't say that we're separating mind from body. We're actually deeply embodying ourselves so that we can remain conscious as our body moves into sleep. And I'll repeat that again. And this will be something that we talk about in the workshop, which comes up in about 10 days, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. But the idea here is that lucid dreaming and dreams in general, we don't really want to cultivate them as mental states and our mind somehow being separate from our body. So if you can imagine, your body goes to sleep, but my mind is wide awake. It's not really what we're after, in my opinion. What we're looking to do is to deeply embody ourselves such that the part of our body that we think of as sleeping is physiologically asleep. If you were to monitor it in a lab, you would say, oh, your body's asleep. But there's still consciousness that is awake in the body. So it's an embodied experience or a body-mind experience rather than trying to cultivate mind and shed the body. That's not what we're after. We're trying to keep them together when we go to sleep. And what that does is it cultivates deeper sensation, deeper embodied awareness in the midst of sleep. And that is what is going to make our dreams remarkable, when we're in our body, in meditation, while sleeping. And the last thing that I'll add to this idea, and there are of course lots of embodiment practices, but Yoga Nidra is really a juicy one because we're already setting the stage for exactly what it is we're after here. We're learning to be a body-mind as we relax very deeply and come closer and closer to physiological sleep, even into physiological sleep, while maintaining that conscious awareness. A last piece to this is for those of you that have had lucid dreams, that are interested in learning to lucid dream. There are lots of guides online. You can look at lucid dream induction techniques, but you might also begin to explore waking yourself up in the middle of the night, or actually more specifically after about 6 hours. So assuming you sleep 8 hours, you'd wake yourself up after 6, spend about 30 to 45 minutes meditating or doing Yoga Nidra practice, which is basically an approach to meditation, and then go back to bed. Your sleep will be lighter and you'll have a better chance of tapping into your last 1 or 2 REM cycles of the night. So you'll have a vivid dreaming states where there's more opportunity to dream, more awareness of your dreams already. Dreams are more vivid, and you'll have that little bit of extra intention and consciousness with you. So that's called the wake back to bed technique. So after about 6 hours, you wake yourself up and then meditate, go back to sleep. And lastly, what do you do once you're in this lucid dream? And this is, I think, what, this is the part that I think, as in our Western culture, we've yet to really honor properly, in the same way that the Eastern and indigenous traditions have explored this for a long time. We have a tendency in the West to think of lucid dreaming as a technique of control, that we enter into these dreams and we can control the dream. In fact, if you were to look up the definition of lucid dreaming, you wouldn't necessarily see dreams where we know that we're dreaming, but dreams where we know that we're dreaming and can control the dream. And that aspect of control, particularly from the Buddhist standpoint, is a mistake in some ways. If we try to control the dream, manipulate it, and even in a lot of Western psychotherapeutic tradition, we'd say that you might be interfering with the natural flow or progression of the dream. And in this, if you were to take a more let's call it a Buddhist stance and try and control what's happening, we miss out on what happens when we surrender, when we allow the dream to unfold in a kind of effortless effort. I think it may even be closer to a Taoist perspective, which is not doing, and which I think is really kind of the essence of meditation, is that there's this effortless effort that you're being but not doing. So those instances where you find yourself in a lucid dream, and I hope that you all do tonight or sometime soon, you might explore not trying to manipulate anything and just being present. And of course, the more you practice being present while you're awake, the easier it will be to maintain presence while you're asleep in the dream. Even when everything around you in the dream is going bonkers, you can maintain this sense of being centered and grounded and embodied, at which point the dream itself can dissolve because it's ultimately just mental chatter too. And you begin to see through that into a kind of spaciousness of mind that is, I think, at the heart of what the Tibetan Buddhist tradition in particular is after when they describe consciousness. You peel back the onion. So just being present in your dream and being able to do anything that you want is a kind of superpower. It's pretty special, and you're certainly welcome to explore it. But as a voice within lucid dreams once told me, lucid dreaming is a trap. If you get too caught up in trying to have lucid dreams and manipulate lucid dreams, you miss the bigger picture, which is pure awareness. And the way to understand, to realize pure awareness is simply to be there and accept what's happening without trying to change it, and focus instead on trying to stay there, trying to maintain the dream, to stay in this lucid place, which is basically the goal of meditative practice too. Right? Your mind gets distracted, you come back. They say you fall down 107 times and you get up 108 times. So the moment that you realize I'm here, that's right where you want to be. So lastly, I know I said lastly already, we're going to practice in a minute. The relationship then between Yoga Nidra and lucid dreaming is Yoga Nidra as a practice, as this guided or deep relaxation practice, which you can do for yourself without someone guiding you, is a way to prep yourself for the lucid dream state. That's probably the easiest way to put these two together. That you can practice Yoga Nidra in your lucid dream. And by practicing Yoga Nidra in your lucid dream, you can arrive in Yoga Nidra, in the real essence of Yoga Nidra, the experience of yoga in sleep, of union during sleep. So lucid dreaming becomes this kind of platform, you might say, to explore deeper states of meditation. So we're going to do some practice now, so you can get a sense of what Yoga Nidra is like. For those of you that have practiced Yoga Nidra before or have been doing it for a long time, you can, just receive this. Really, for everyone, I encourage you to get comfortable. You're welcome to sit. You could lay down if you prefer. You could stand. You could even be walking. You don't need to look at the screen, though you're welcome to. And we'll practice for about 20 minutes or so. And I think Yoga Nidra as a practice is really so beautiful because it has implications on everything that we do. The idea here, again, is not to train yourself to be a really great dreamer, but to practice so that we become a really great person. And in our progression toward wholeness, we'll naturally find ourselves more aware in our sleeping states, as well as in our waking states, and in all the states in between. So as you get settled, once again connecting with your breath, letting your breath drop down into your belly. You might take 2 or 3 nice deep belly breaths as a signal to your body, mind, that it's time to relax, giving yourself permission to relax. To soften and let your body go slack. Take a moment to imagine someone or something or some place that puts you at ease, that sparks an inner joy, as if you could crack an inner smile. Could be a person, past or present or imaginary, or your favorite pet, or a spirit animal. It could be a memory of a wonderful time in your life. It could be a special place that you go to or went to as a child or have been along the way. Someone or something or some place that fills you with this deep-rooted sense of joy, safety, and security. And we'll call this thing our ally. And as we practice, and at any time from now on, if and when you feel like you'd like to change your mood, you want to take your foot off the gas and bring about good feeling in your body, you can imagine your ally. Spark good feeling in your body. And imagine connecting to the divine, whatever that means for you. The background of all things, or the healing energy of the whole universe. Life force. As if you were resetting your internal compass. And welcome a sense of release and relaxation in the tips of your toes. You might imagine a healing energy welling up beneath the soles of your feet. Traveling up through the tops of your feet, your heels and your ankles. And even if your body doesn't relax right away, just giving yourself permission to soften, as if you could surrender your body to the surfaces supporting you. Slowly traveling up through the lengths of your legs, softening your calves and shins, your knees, back, and in front. And the lengths of your thighs, and up into your hips and your hip sockets. Softening the marrows of your bones, very centers of your bones, all of the tendons and ligaments, fibers of your being. Everything soft and slack, even softening the space around your legs, the space within your legs. Like you were slipping into a warm bath. And from the tips of your fingers up through the lengths of your fingers, and softening your palms and the backs of your hands, wrists, and your forearms, elbows, upper arms, and your shoulders, your shoulder sockets. Imagine softening the centers of your bones, the marrows of your bones. Everything soft and slack. Softening your root, the space beneath your root, your pelvis and your groin, the base of your spine, tailbone and your sacrum, lower abdomen and your belly. Softening your lower back, middle back, and upper back. The length of your spine, and your whole back body. Your solar plexus and your sternum. Ribs, chest, and collarbone in front and in back. And your whole body from your neck down. Everything soft and slack. Softening the back of your neck and your throat. You could imagine your throat opening like a flower. And the weight of your head all of the muscles and bones of your face. Everything's soft. Softening your jaw and the bones of your cheeks. The orbits of your eyes. And the centers of your eyes. Your brow. Forehead. Temples. And your scalp. Softening your whole body and the space within your body. The space all around your body. Beyond left and right. Above you and beneath you. Beneath the soles of your feet. And well beyond the crown of your head. Letting yourself be here without the need to do anything or change anything. Just being. As if you were giving yourself the break that we've always wanted to take. As if you could let it all go. Just be. And you might feel back or feel into this place of pure awareness without any border or boundary, as if all of this were playing out before you like a movie, as if your body were inside of you, inside of awareness, just awareness. Spacious, the emptiness that is full, and the fullness that is empty. And in the next moment or two, you might take a slightly deeper breath into your belly. And if you like, you could take a look back over your experience as if you were emerging from a dream. Taking note of anything that you might have found interesting, anything that may have stood out to you, any insight you may have received, or messages from your unconscious or higher self. And if you like, you could place your hands against your body, perhaps a hand over your belly and another over your heart, or anywhere that they feel called. You could wiggle your fingers and toes. You can give yourself a little rub or a squeeze or a hug or a yawn or stretch. Slowly, gently bringing yourself back. If you're lying down, you're welcome to continue to lie down, but you could also come back up to a seat if you want. But as you move, moving slowly so that you maintain this healing resonance in your body-mind. We maintain this sense of presence, awareness, perhaps relaxation. It's possible you feel a little dazed or light afterward. You might feel heavier. You might feel energized. You could feel like you're ready for bed. Yoga Nidra does different things to different people at different times. So it really is unique, every experience. And again, you might imagine someone or something that could benefit from your healing energy, which ultimately is not yours, but a healing energy that we can all tap into. And without too much effort, without the need to force anything, just offering it up, maybe to all of us here. It is possible that we can all come into resonance together. You can feel the vibe over the internet here. It's just a physical manifestation or in some ways, I guess, a digital manifestation of our interconnectedness. It's an interface. And sooner or later, one would hope we'll be able to shed it too. So thank you for that. That was just a brief practice. They can be shorter or they can be much longer. And that's something that we also can talk about in the longer workshop that happens in a couple weeks, and that we talk about in our Yoga Nidra training, which I'll mention toward the end. But in the interest of time, I thought we would take some time for questions. Well, we don't have too much time, maybe 10 or 15 minutes. So Eli, if you're there, you're welcome. Those of you that are still here and still with it, you can send him questions in the chat function. I think you said that was the easiest way to do it, or do you want folks to also raise their hand too?
I guess there's no real bias on which one maybe I prefer or which one's easier. I think it's, if somebody has a very concise question, drop it in the chat. But if you have a little bit of extra context, feel free to raise your hand and say it yourself in however you see best.
If you want to say something but you're not sure what it is, which I can completely relate to, then just you can raise your hand.
Yeah, I think with some of this subject matter, especially that I see with Menla, it's not always as easy to make your point in a question.
Well, I can take this one from Carla. How long was that Yoga Nidra? Thank you. Feel renewed. I'm so glad. That was about 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes tops. I didn't count it to the minute, but that was for me. I typically aim for about 30 to 35 minutes for a full practice, although you'll see some people will guide 60-minute practices. So that was about half length. And one of the things that I teach in the trainings that we run is a protocol where there are steps that you take that show up in the Yoga Nidra delivery. So that was not the full protocol, but it was one way of delivering the Yoga Nidra protocol. And it's pretty arbitrary. As Yoga Nidra, the practice, has really only been around for about 50 years in this way, as a kind of protocol where you move through these various steps to guide relaxation. But again, the idea of Yoga Nidra has been around for thousands of years. But since the practice itself, this guided relaxation, is only 50 years old, I think it's still wide open, and you can do just about anything you want with it. Recordings available, Marta. Yes, I'll mention that at the end, if you can hang around for a few more minutes. But I'm honored. Ciara, what advice do you have for people who have trouble recalling dreams or staying aware during meditation Yoga Nidra? Well, they say a gram of practice is worth a ton of theory. I'm a firm believer that if you put your mind to something and you give it the appropriate amount of energy, intention, and hours, it will come to fruition. I've come to accept that I'm never going to be a guitar virtuoso because I probably didn't start young enough, but I enjoy it. So I give it as much time as I can, and I notice the results. And I think the same is with recalling dreams. If you start dream journaling and you really have a real, you put effort into it, you'll start to yield the fruit of that. Now, of course, there are sometimes physiological issues. There can be substances, anything from the foods and things we eat and the things that we drink to medicines that we take, things that interfere with our memory or our ability to remain conscious during those times, or our conscious recall of those times. So I would be careful about certain substances, cannabis, caffeine, alcohol, the ones that sort of come to mind right away that can interfere with our, you might say, our peaked consciousness, that can interfere with us being really clear, and just, keep going with it. Lori asks, is this best done in bed before going to sleep or anytime during the day? Any time that you have to practice is the right time to practice, like all of this. The movement that I'm really interested in is away from thinking of these things as practices or routines that we fit into our day when we can, which of course, it is that. And we're looking to develop a baseline, a kind of default meditative state where we live in a perpetual state of presence. So the more you practice, the more you forge those neural signatures, if you prefer, the more you forge that body-mind connection, so that your groundedness, your awareness becomes who you are, not something that you do. So if you have time when you get in bed before going to sleep, great. If you have time in the afternoon, nap time, great. If you have time in the morning, great. Everybody's a little bit different, and you'll have to feel it out to see what works best for you. While driving, not so great necessarily. Be careful when you're doing things, operating heavy equipment, stuff like that. Probably not the best time for deep guided relaxation. But you can learn to do this for yourself. So you can use recordings, and I'll mention mine in a moment. There are lots of them on YouTube and Insight Timer and all that stuff. But you can also teach yourself to do this such that it doesn't really take 30 minutes to go through a whole protocol. You just tell yourself to soften, and you're there very quickly because you've created that learned memory. And it's almost like a muscle memory where you can relax more deeply quickly. It's called an autogenic response, where you've created this network of associations such that you tell yourself to soften, and you soften. So Cameron asks, when you are aware in a lucid dream, do you have any advice on staying relaxed? I wake up due to excitement. Exactly. And this is what I was alluding to before, is that, what happens in the lucid dream, and this was a good point, a good segue, because I mentioned this idea of not controlling the dream, but more often than not, particularly for folks who are first experiencing lucid dreams, but even all along the way, there are things that give us a shock. And what that is the body, essentially, or the body-mind, divulging a kind of nervous impulse, you might say. It can manifest in the dream as a monster that gives us a fright, or it could be, it could be just about anything. They're basically synonymous. What we see in the dream is a reflection of the state of our being, the state of our body-mind. So the more you practice things like Yoga Nidra and begin to use it as a space to address the nervous charges or energy blockages or things that prevent us from relaxing, and that's a whole other aspect of Yoga Nidra that we can't get into tonight, but it can become this space for processing our emotional energy, processing our pent-up emotion. So a lot of times we'll be in the dream and we either get too excited, or we get afraid, or even, there's not enough happening. And it's basically a reflection of what's going on in our nervous system. So the more we learn to temper our nervous system by practicing Yoga Nidra, which helps us stay relaxed even as things get crazy, or you get into the lucid dream and there's this moment of, aha, I'm here, this is so cool. We have to learn to take a breath, soften into it, and let ourselves experience the joy and ecstasy, or the fear and terror, without getting too attached one way or the other. without letting it disrupt our sense of presence. So it's just like meditation in that way, that you see these things happening, this impulse, the excitement. I call this capacity. It's our capacity to stay present even as the ecstasy is cranked up all the way, or as the fear and anxiety is cranked up all the way. Either one is just a kind of manifestation, or you might say a superficial manifestation that we can learn to witness from a place of equanimity. So the more we practice equanimity, the more we can see those impulses for what they are and disidentify from them. And sometimes there's just an aspect of, we have to experience it enough. We have to have enough lucid dreams where we get excited and lose our lucidity and wake up, or where we get afraid and wake up, before we can notice, okay, that happened last time, but this time I'm going to take a breath and stay calm and just let it happen through me without letting it throw me in any one direction. Cool. I caught that, Cameron. Thank you. It's a great question. I think it's actually a huge question, because it's probably the experience of most lucid dreamers, because they're, and I don't know your situation in particular, but most lucid dreamers are not necessarily practicing really softening and being present. And that's the key, is that you develop such a peaceful seat in your own body mind through your ongoing spiritual practice, that when you find yourself in those instances, it ain't no thing, as they say. It's just take it as it comes.
And so, Nick, I think you should keep going with, I think there's another question, but if you want to go ahead and mention the class on the 24th first, make sure we get that in.
Sure. Not sure if there are any more questions. I think that might be it.
Did you get to the one with Cameron?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. So
yeah. So okay. Then I guess we'll wrap it up. So I'll take just a couple more minutes here to share a little bit about, or to mention at least, 10 days from tonight, on the 24th of October, we're going to do a 4-hour workshop. 2 hours in the morning from 10 to 12, and then 2 more hours from 2 to 4. They're not separate, so you sign up for the one full course. And we're going to go deeper into all of these subjects, more opportunity to practice. So it will really, this was a little bit like, compressing a whole lot into a very small amount of time, but hopefully helpful. So we'll have a chance to sort of unfold a little bit more on October 24th, and you can register for that through Menla. The course is called Lucid Dreaming and the Transformative Self. So we'll talk and explore experientially, through breathing practice, through guided yoga nidra practice, how we make changes to who we are, and get closer to that realization of our what you might call our true self, if you believe in such things. But we start to shed who we think we are, and really are able to listen to who and what our body mind is asking of us. Maybe you could say even what the universe is asking of us. So dreams have the power to reveal this to us. And I speak from experience when I say that they've profoundly shaped the course of my life in a way that I think is positive. So I'm a believer. And I run an organization called Evolutionary Education, which is an experiential learning platform. We've done lots of things in person, but increasingly now are online. And we actually just recorded a Yoga Nidra teacher training earlier in September, or the end of September, and you can now access that online. So you can take the training, receive certification, and all of that, all through our website. So that's evolutionaryeducation.org. You can also find me at nickatlas.com. And I do private work with people and all kinds of things for yoga teachers and therapists, and just anyone who's interested in these sleep, dream, relaxation, increasingly psychedelics, a lot of ways of thinking about consciousness and exploring consciousness. Those are the areas I specialize in. I wrote a book called The Light Travelers, A Mystical Journey. And it's a book about really the first decade of my spiritual awakening and these exploration of dreaming and consciousness expansion and learning about who I am. But it's really more about a generation that is also waking up, you might say, and the more of the movement of exploring consciousness in our culture. And it took me all over the world. So there are some really incredible stories of synchronicity and mystical experience and nature, lots of travel stories. So if you're interested in that, you can find it at the websites I mentioned, Evolutionary Education or nickatlas.com, or on this website, thelighttravelers.com. That's where the book is. But all three will take you to the same place. All roads lead to Om, which is a terrible joke. Let's see. I think really that's it for now. If you have any questions for me, I try to respond as much as possible, so you can reach me through those websites. And I'm happy to have some conversation with you. We have all different kinds of programs on there in addition to our Yoga Nidra trainings. And I want to thank you all so much for coming out tonight and supporting Menla. I see that Eli has listed the links for Menla in the chat as well, tibethouse.us and menla.org. These are, I think, I don't want to speak on behalf of Menla, but for those of us in the wellness world that are used to doing lots of in-person retreats and things like that, these are difficult times, as I'm sure they are for many of you and your businesses. So please don't hesitate to contribute to Menla and the great work that they're doing, because it's really a special thing, and we need to support our institutes of learning. It's really important that people have spaces for this. And I'm so honored to have had this space tonight. So I thank you all so much for coming. And I look forward to sharing a whole lot more about dreams and lucid dreams and how all of these things fit together the next time that we meet on October 24th.
All right, Nick, that was wonderful. Everybody, you will see some of the links I have put down. Once this event ends, and it will be put onto the landing page, you will see in the chat that I have posted that link so you can have this recording. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight, and thank you to Nick, and thank you to Menla and to Bet House. All the links are provided below so you can stay connected with all our communities. I also posted a donation link for Menla. Anything you can give is deeply appreciated, and it goes a long way to support this work and helps us to continue offering such great practices like what Nick has provided for us tonight. Thank you all very much. The landing page is in the chat. You can save the chat yourself so that you will just have all of those links. You can also go and grab them individually if you'd like to. And you should be getting a link in an email that also provides the landing page with the video. So we definitely have you covered. I'm going to leave the room open for the next few minutes, and it should shut down at about 8:30. But so you guys can all check in the chat and get yourself situated. And I will warn you before the chat becomes closed. All right, thank you for your participation, and we hope to see you at any future Menla online events.
Thank you for flying. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Take care.
Be safe, everybody. Much love. Safety and health to all your loved ones. Everybody staying healthy this time. Take care.
This video was brought to you in part through the generous support of the Tibet House US Menla membership community and viewers like you. To learn more about the benefits of Tibet House membership, please visit our websites at tibethouse.us or menla.org.